The panzers of Army Group Center, only 35 kilometers from Moscow, try to break through the Soviet lines of defense to the north of the capital, at Zvetko and at Kolomna to the south. The steadfast resistance of the Russian forces and a counterattack in the Tula area forced the Germans to retreat. In the south of the country, Marshal Walter von Reichenau wishes to keep his armored forces on the river Mius, north of Tagarog, to allow his men some time to rest, but Hitler denies his request. The Swiss SS officer Karl Jager, commander of the Einsatzkommando 3 in Kaunas, Lithuania, sends Himmler a report in which he acknowledges the killing of 137,346 people, mostly Jews, in only 3 months. In Saint Florentin in France, Marshal Pétain, the head of the Vichy government, meets Marshal Hermann Göring to discuss Franco-German relations. In Libya, in North Africa, Rommel manages to re-establish the siege of Tobruk as it was before Operation Crusader. In Japan, Emperor Hirohito gives his consent to the attack on the American naval base at Pearl Harbor. In Formosa, Taiwan, General Matsuharu Homa, who opposes the war, finalizes plans to invade the Philippines. Operations will begin within a week. The Americans have 10 infantry divisions, some cruisers and destroyers, and a significant number of aircraft on the islands. In Russia, the final attempt of the German armored forces to lay siege to Tula fails. General Guderian sets up his headquarters at Yenizha Polonia, the birthplace of Leo Tolstoy. North of Moscow, sapper units advance towards Kimi, a small town 20 kilometers from the Russian capital. The German soldiers can see the Kremlin's domes, but are forced back by the Russians. The temperature drops to below minus 30 degrees Celsius. The Red Army abandons the Finnish naval base of Hanko, occupied at the start of 1940. The Finnish government proclaims the annexation of the territories seized by the Soviet Union. Meanwhile, Stavka concentrates its forces to launch an offensive on all fronts. Hitler begins a tour of the headquarters of the different army groups. Vice Admiral Chuichui Nagumo, commander of the 1st Air Fleet sailing across the North Pacific, receives a message, climb Mount Nitaka, the order to attack the American base at Pearl Harbor on the island of Oahu, Hawaii. In the Sea War, Swordfish planes equipped with radar systems carrying out reconnaissance missions over the Straits of Gibraltar attack U-96, commanded by Heinrich Lehmann, and U-558, captained by Gunther Kretsch. The Japanese fleet, comprised of 6 aircraft carriers, 2 battleships, 3 cruisers, 9 destroyers, 441 warplanes, and 5 mini-submarines, is 550 miles northwest of Hawaii. Nagumo orders it to change course and set sail for Pearl Harbor with the aim of neutralizing the American fleet in the Pacific for a long time. Force Z, commanded by Vice Admiral Tom Phillips and comprised of the battleship Prince of Wales, the cruiser Repulse, and 4 destroyers, arrives at Singapore. The aircraft carrier HMS Indomitable is undergoing repairs after having run aground on a reef off the coast of Jamaica. On the Russian front, the Luftwaffe's planes are having trouble taking off because their engines and the fuel are frozen. On the other hand, the Soviet Air Force, which employs special equipment to cope with the effects of the cold, can provide support to its troops. The forces of Army Group Center, facing a heavy snowstorm, managed to blow up the railway linking Tula with Moscow. Hitler's Nacht und Nebel, night and fog directive, is applied to the occupied territories, denying basic legal rights to detainees. Documents are destroyed and prisoners officially cease to exist and can be murdered with complete impunity. The Japanese ships refuel south of the Aleutian Islands and continue their journey to the north of the Hawaiian Islands. At the same time, General Yamashita's 25th Army, comprised of 60,000 men on board 20 ships, is sailing to Malaysia and Thailand, supported by the Southern Naval Fleet of Vice Admiral Jizaburo Ozawa and 460 aircraft of the 3rd Air Division. The commanders of the American naval bases in the Pacific try to gather more information relating to the earlier warnings given by General Marshal. In the German-Russian War, Luftwaffe reconnaissance aircraft report sightings of substantial contingents of Soviet troops advancing from Kachira, located 115 kilometers from Moscow, to the south on the road to Tula. The temperatures drop to minus 35 degrees Celsius. The German commanders discuss the possibility of delaying Operation Typhoon for the time being due to the severe weather conditions. In Rostenburg, Hitler orders the transfer of an Air Force Corps from the Soviet front to Sicily and North Africa to support Rommel. The Africa Corps launches a new attack against Tobruk, which ends in failure. In Moscow, Stalin meets with Anthony Eden, the British Foreign Secretary, and General Władysław Sikorski, Prime Minister of the Polish government in exile, with whom he signs an agreement for mutual assistance. The Stavka, Supreme Command of the Red Army, orders a massive offensive against the German positions. Along an 800-kilometer front spanning north to south, ski troops, Cossacks, guerrilla units, and the bulk of the Red Army, well equipped for the cold, and supported both by T-34 tanks and by the Air Force, throw themselves against the Wehrmacht forces along the front and in their rear. The exhausted German soldiers, lacking supplies and with no air cover, face freezing temperatures that take a heavy toll on those who keep guard. The attack against Moscow has failed, and the High Command requests Hitler's authorization to retreat to safer positions until the spring, but the Führer denies their request. In Washington, as a part of the Japanese strategy, Ambassador Kichisaburo Nomura and Special Envoy Saburo Kurusu, aware that their fleet is sailing towards Hawaii, try to extend the negotiations with the American Department of State until the attack against Pearl Harbor. The Soviet counteroffensive forces the decimated German troops to withdraw to more secure positions. In the Central Theater, Marshal Fedor von Bock, overwhelmed by the number of Russian soldiers, tries unsuccessfully to follow Hitler's orders to halt the forces of Marshal Georgy Zhukov. But he is forced to order a chaotic retreat, moving 150 kilometers back from Moscow. The Japanese government instructs its ambassadors in Washington to break off relations with the Americans. The U.S. Navy's Cryptography Department, headed by Alvin Kramer, intercepts and decodes information relating to the naval maneuvers near Pearl Harbor. Lieutenant Lester Schultz hands President Roosevelt a copy of the decoded messages. After reading them, the president comments to his advisor, Harry Hopkins, "This means war." At the same time, the British Admiralty reports that 2 large Japanese ship formations have been sighted sailing south of Cambodia on an eastbound course.